So I have another great book to let you know about. It's called Unplugged: How to Break Up with Your Phone and Reclaim Your Life from Richard Simon. Richard joins us today. Richard, what inspired you to write this book in the first place? Was there like a personal moment that you said, "Oh, I need to put my phone down already"?
Yes, thanks for having me on. There were so many facets of life that were strained by the phone. It was impacting my professional life. It was impacting my personal life when it came to the relationship I had with my wife and my kids. And I knew I had to do something about it. And I just felt helpless because I was trying so many different hacks that are espoused in self-help articles and books like deleting social media, digital Sabbath, turning your phone to grayscale, rubber band, and all those things are noble. But for something that's as addictive as a phone, it just didn't go far enough. So I decided to turn my phone off for an entire year, and it was one of the most transformative periods of my life.
Okay, wait. How did you even do that? Like, what if somebody was trying to get in touch with you? What if you had to check your email? Like, what about stuff like that? You're making
Yes,
me
this is,
nervous.
yeah, it should. Yeah. Yeah, so the preparation stage is a really, really important stage that I talk about in the book, especially after interviewing dozens of people who had done the same thing that I did. Um, it's critical. You need to make sure you establish a support group that goes for friends, family, and colleagues so they know what you're doing. Now, in the book, I recommend at least 60 days with having your smartphone off, and I outlined four different ways of doing that, four different what I call breakup styles. But in my particular case, I had to make sure that I set expectations as best I could with those around me. So if I had a meeting with someone and I was meeting them in person, I had to go out of my way to make sure I tell them, look, there will not be a way to get in touch with me if something does in fact change. And that's really a critical piece in terms of the equation.
Sometimes I look back on it and I think how did we do it? We couldn't get in touch with people. We had to just, show up and hope that they were there or find a payphone. I don't know. The idea of breaking up with your phone though is so deep because it is a relationship that we have with this thing.
Yes, yes, the average American adult spends more than 5 hours a day on their smartphone. And I certainly was no exception to this before I went through my phoneless odyssey. And it's time that we don't get back. Our time on this earth, it's a finite, non-renewable resource. And we're spending more than 5 hours a day on our phones. That means that's more than 75 full days a year that we're losing. That's time that we don't get back. And one of the most eye-opening things for me going through my experience and interviewing dozens of people who did the same was that you get the lost art of regaining time when you go through this process. You'll have hours a day that you didn't have before.
Mhm. It's funny. So Father's Day was just this weekend, and we were at my in-laws, and I took a few pictures, but I had to put something together for work purposes. And I said, oh, I should have taken more pictures. But I'm also kind of proud of myself because I don't take as many pictures of things that I'm doing as I should for work purposes, but for life purposes, I feel like that means I'm really in the moment and I'm not thinking about capturing the moment. I'm in it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I have a whole sidebar in the book about photography. And so people say, what do I know about photos in terms of a smartphone? Well, just like music, photography has become such a default activity when it comes to the smartphone. Like I've got three young kids, and thousands of photos that we're never ever going to look at or use are being taken by a phone. And the truth is that if you invest in a physical camera, you not only become less dependent on your smartphone, but you become much, much more intentional with the photos that you take.
It's so funny you should say that too, because I was going through my photos. So we went on vacation. And I had to make room in my phone because I was going to be conducting some interviews while I was there as well. So I'm going through and I'm thinking to myself, I have so many photos and they never see the light of day. Like, what should I do? Should I make an album? But I'm like, who the hell's going to look at that? My poor daughter's going to be stuck with all this crap when I'm gone. And I mean, pictures are right up there with them.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, physical camera is something that I recommend folks invest in as a part of this process. The other thing I recommend that people invest in is a physical newspaper. we've gotten so accustomed to in this day and age, feeling like we're members of the State Department. Like I work in Washington, D.C., and we feel like, all right, I'm like an embassy member, and I need to check whether it's CNN, Fox News, whatever your news of choice is, we got to be checking it constantly. The only person that benefits is the news outlet. It doesn't benefit you and your anxiety. So when you actually recalibrate things, you turn your smartphone off and you check a physical newspaper once a day, one, you're going to be more informed. And two is you're going to be less anxious. So I think that's really an important piece in addition to photography is news consumption.
You are making me laugh like crazy today because you're so like on point with all of this. How am I going to know what's happening with Karen Reed if I can't like scroll on TikTok? You're right, though. Like, why do I need to know? Like, I'm going to know when I find out. So, watching all the videos leading up to it's not going to do anything. What surprised you the most when you started researching how addicted we are to our phones?
Yeah, I mean, there's the quantitative piece. I mean, there's one person I interviewed. He's a minister who lives in Salt Lake City. Well, now he lives in Denver, but he spent 13 hours a day on his phone. A school principal I interviewed in Chicago, he spent 6 hours a day on his phone. Really, the time piece was something that really amazed me and how forthcoming my sources and the people I interview and profiled were. So there's definitely the quantitative piece. But then there's the qualitative piece. And one of my favorite quotes in the book, which was so eye-opening to me, was the school principal in Chicago who got rid of his smartphone and switched to a basic phone. I go through four different breakup styles in the book, and one of them is simplifying your phone. So he moved to a basic phone. And he told me, he said, as a school principal, he thinks one of the most dangerous things for us as parents is that now with smartphones, we are present and absent at the same time with our kids. And they think that is a normal state. And it's much more dangerous to be present and absent than just to be absent. Because if you're absent and you're at work, then what do your kids know in terms of you looking down at your phone? But when you're with them in person and you're missing out on those core moments, those moments in terms of eye contact, it can be incredibly dangerous. So modeling the right behavior for loved ones, especially kids, is so critical.
So, in your book, you mentioned strategies like digital detoxes. How long does it take before people actually start to feel a difference?
It depends. Almost everyone, this speaks to how much of a behavioral addiction this is, almost everyone that I interviewed, including myself, will experience some level of withdrawal. That is completely normal. It's natural. Sometimes it might be only a day or two of, having headaches or anxiety, and
Oh,
sometimes that
yeah.
can persist for as long as 2 to 3 weeks. But once you get past that period, and you can prepare all you want, sometimes when you just turn it off, it can be a lot. But after you get past that period, that's when the change really starts because you're going to have a lot more time. We're talking you're going to have as much as 4 to 5 hours extra each day that you didn't have before. So how are you going to fill that time? And that's where preparation comes in.
That's what I was gonna say. What do I do with all that time that I'm not scrolling on TikTok?
Yeah. Something I recommend is that people they get a physical piece of paper with a sheet and they create categories that are really important to them in terms of life values. So that could be community, that could be relationships, that could be athletic. And within each one of those categories, you write down the items that are most to you. That could be going to church twice a week. That could be joining the local book club. That could be meditating for 10 minutes when I wake up in the morning. All different kinds of things you can add to your sheet. Now, when you're done with that sheet, especially if you have people living in the house with you put it up in the fridge. There's a level of accountability there. And whenever you have a free moment, which is going to be a lot, you're going to have a lot of free moments now with your smartphone off. You go to your menu and you basically select off the menu. If you live by yourself, share it as a Google Doc with a friend so they could hold you accountable too during that process.
Yeah, I like that. So tell us, what does your phone routine look like now?
Yeah, so I mentioned four different approaches in the book, breakup styles. I mentioned the switching to a basic phone. The approach that I use is what I've coined the off by default approach. So when I turn my phone off for a year, this is the approach I embraced. And it basically is that the smartphone stays off. It can still come with you, but it stays off. And then if there's an emergency, and only if there's an emergency, then you can turn it on. Because ultimately, sometimes your wife or husband or a child or a parent might want to get in touch and feel like I need you in case there's an emergency, you can then tell them and say, look, if there is an emergency, let's say I'm out with the kids and someone falls and I take them to urgent care, I promise you I'll turn my phone on. But in reality, there really aren't that many emergencies in life. So over the course of my phoneless odyssey for the year, I didn't turn my phone on, and the same thing for the few other people I interviewed in the book who have embraced this approach. Now, how does this look today after I did my
Mhm.
phoneless odyssey? So you can change the definition of off by default slightly. Instead of only turning your phone on for emergencies, now I only turn my phone on for something that will enhance my life. So I live in Baltimore. We went to Pennsylvania yesterday and there was traffic. I turned my phone on. I hadn't turned it on for a few days. Used GPS to navigate us through the commotion that was happening on the highway. We got to our destination. I turned off the smartphone. I only turn it on if it's something that will enhance my life. If I would leave it on in my pocket, even after all that I've been through, it's too much. I would want to
Mhm.
check it all the time. But when it's in its off state as a default state, I feel like I'm in control of it rather than it being in control of me.
How does your wife feel about all this? Is she on this journey as well, or is she still scrolling?
She's definitely on this journey as well. I've rubbed off on her quite a bit, where she hasn't gone as far as off by default that I've done, but she is so unbelievably intentional when it comes to her phone now, especially when she gets back home after work, evening time and morning time. Her phone's never by her. And that wouldn't have been the case before I went through my process. We truly have reconnected on a much deeper level because of all this. From the little things, like we used to text throughout the day, like nonstop, and now when we get back to see each other in the evening, there's some excitement because we don't know what's going on because we're not texting, to bigger things like the kids are asleep, and now we have time to reconnect on a much deeper level.
Yeah. It's funny. My husband and I, we were having lunch the other day at home, and he was scrolling on TikTok, and I was watching Con Mom on Netflix. And I took a second and I was like, oh my God, like we're sitting here with each other, but we're not even talking to each other. We're both in our own worlds. He actually had his earbuds in, so he was like really into TikTok. And I don't know, it's kind of sad. Like you're living together, but you're not together.
Yes, that's very powerful. That's what my wife and I used to do. We would put the kids to sleep, and then both of us would be on our phones. And as you said, you're together but not together.
Hmm.
So you definitely need to have downtime. People, you should be able to stream a show on Netflix. I consider that to be a form of high quality leisure. If you derive benefit from a show you watch every week, great. Awesome. You should continue to do that. But after the show's over, I mean, generally speaking, most people will turn it off. Unlike the phone, where you just keep on scrolling, and TikTok is just an endless scroll. So, watching a show together, a husband and wife, a Netflix show, that's fantastic. I think it's a great way to connect. But after you turn it off, that's just time for you and your partner. And you can talk about things. You can talk about what you're going to do tomorrow, what you're going to do with carpool, what you're going to get from the grocery store. It could be mundane, it doesn't have to be deep. That time together, it really should be without screens.
Yeah. It's so crazy. We're so connected and yet we're so separated, so closed off at the same time. It's crazy how it's gotten to
Yeah,
your,
we're
yeah.
embracing mere connection instead of actual conversation. Like
Yeah.
there is something that is gets lost so much in terms of text messages that can get
Mm,
misconstrued,
right.
especially to loved ones. You can't make it to a family dinner, and the kid or the parent will say, "Oh, sorry, can't make it." Dot dot dot. Well, that person might have worked incredibly hard on the meal. That text could be incredibly painful for the other person, whereas the other person's like, "Oh, whatever, I'm just going to send this off real fast. It doesn't matter."
Hmm.
But if you were on the phone and you heard from the parent or the child who prepared the meal, and then all of a sudden you hear, "Oh gosh, they worked so hard and they're so sad," then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'll come over. Or I'm sorry I can't make it this time, but I promise, like next week I'm gonna come. Versus text where it's just like one person's just gonna be really sad on the other end.
Right. But it did make calling in to work sick better. I like that part. I don't have to talk to anyone when I want to stay home.
You found the one piece that works well.
I always gotta find the rainbow. That's what I do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, Richard, thank you so much. The book is called Unplugged. Unplug. Where could people go to find more on you and the book?
Yeah, so the book is available at all major booksellers. You can get it on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes& and Noble, Unplug, and then for me personally, you'd be surprised, but I have no social media. So, because I have no social media, you can reach me on my website. It's www.richard-simon.com, or you can just find the book on any major retailer.
How am I going to tag you online now?